Here we go. It's time to make everybody angry. Casual fans, competitive players, fanboys, Digimon fans, somehow. Focus. You can do this, AJ. You can do this. I mean, come on. You already know how to get under the competitive snob skin. Just look at those comments on your last Pokemon video. How hard can everyone else be? You can't make everyone happy, so might as well piss them off. Hey, before we get into today's topic at hand, I just wanted to let you guys all know that we have a podcast now. It's called Directly to You, and it's available on podcast services like iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and right here on YouTube, linked in the card that just popped up, in the description, and in our pinned comment. If you like the stuff we make here, you'll love that. It's basically an unscripted 90-minute long episode of this show. Plus, you'll get to know us more, we'll answer viewer questions and whatnot. It's a great time. If you use any of the podcast services I listed, please do us a solid and give it a rating. The goal is to get featured in as many of the new and noteworthy sections as we possibly can. Okay, on to the video. In my last Pokemon Switch video, I talked a lot about changes I wanted to see introduced to the Pokemon franchise's formula. You know, with Nintendo Switch being the perfect place to refresh and renew big Nintendo franchises and all. I figured, why not? And threw some ideas into the ring. Prefacing all of them with the fact that for Pokemon, the most profitable IP in the world, the sky is the limit. If a team like CD Projekt Red can manage a game like The Witcher 3 in about 3.5 years, media juggernauts like Nintendo, Game Freak, and Pokemon Company at large can make a game just as grand in a comparable amount of time. If not, even faster given the right team, tools, budgets, all things a brand with the reverence and clout on such a level can easily attract. Some of those proposed changes got taken completely out of context, and people assumed I wanted to completely gut the core of Pokemon. And while that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for a 20-plus-year-old franchise that has gone virtually unchanged since its inception, that wasn't my intent. So let's talk about Pokemon for Switch again with the added context of the reception of that video, in addition to about a month or so of additional information through rumors and the like. First, let's address the biggest complaints in the video. Then I want to touch on my thoughts on the Gen 4 remake. So first, the reaction to the reactions of the last video, the biggest of which spawning from people drawing conclusions and running with them. What I'm referring to is the portion of my video where I said that I would like the battle system to add the ability to tell your Pokemon to jump and dodge, with the keyword being tell. A lot of people took that as me wanting Pokken tournament mechanics in the next mainline game, as if I didn't know of Pokken's existence to just say that in the video, if that is what I wanted. So, to be super specific, that's not what I meant. I meant something along the lines of quick time events of some sort with varying degrees of difficulty depending on the move's accuracy for obvious reasons. Your Pokemon speed, because if it's quick, it should have an easier time dodging. The opponent Pokemon speed, because if it's quicker, then not so much. The environment with icy or muddy terrains affecting your Pokemon's movement, which again, for the peeps in the back, I am not saying the trainer should directly control. You know, stuff like that. Funnily enough, sometime after my video came out in November, rumors that Game Freak would be implementing a system along these lines in the Switch Pokemon games started making the rounds. So maybe Game Freak themselves understand that the bulk of Pokemon fans want changes. Something that also played out in my video's like to dislike ratio. The next part that I want to touch on is the ability to make improvised attacks like Ash is known to do in the anime. People seem to have thought that this is some crazy hard mechanic for developers to implement, but there's two things to counter that. The first of which being what I continually reference, Game Freak is not a rookie indie dev. Pokemon Company is a multi-billion-dollar company with an IP that brings in billions of dollars a year. Any mechanic they see worth pursuing, they have the money, talent, and or resources necessary to do. This fact is underscored by the fact that Game Freak and other partners like Creatures Inc. have been posting job listings all over the place since my last video for such talent. The second reason being they've already done a simplified version of this with isolated moves in the past, the water, grass, and fire pledge attacks from Gen 5. They could pretty easily expand that line of thought into an if this then that system for every type of move. The way they interact should be second nature. It's not hard to understand that water attacks should pull in certain terrains. The puddle should present the possibility of weakened fire attacks, steam lowering visibility and therefore accuracy, etc. Or fire being set to grass under a Pokemon's feet, resulting in extra damage if not positioned correctly, which the trainer could direct their Pokemon to correct through a limited movement command system similar to a Fire Emblem, but not full-on strategy game levels of this mechanic. Just enough to limit movement per turn without robbing you of the chance to attack. To which people said and will say, but this game is a kid's game. To which I say, so is pretty much everything else Nintendo makes. That doesn't stop them from making complex systems in Fire Emblem while simultaneously making it approachable. Kids aren't dumb. The Pokemon systems can stand to gain complexities like these while remaining approachable and understandable for kids. The only but what about comments I will even entertain with any amount of concern is the competitive scene. And in all honesty, my initial instinct in the original video was to suggest that they make these new systems an experimental option, an additional battle mode similar to the implementation of double battles in Gen 3. They weren't everywhere, but they were present. And look at them now, the mode of choice for competitive. So that leads me to say competitive players need to just suck it up and adapt if Game Freak opts to change things up. The concern shouldn't be only if the battle system changes at all, it should be if the new system can be competitive, which I'm sure it can be, especially if the changes are along the lines of what I suggested. Along those lines, I made a comment about the random encounters. Allow me to reiterate, they don't need to be in the game. Switch is powerful enough to render a visual representation of Pokemon in the world. Random encounters were a means to an end that devolved into a convention. That convention is no longer needed. Pokemon will still be Pokemon without the tedium of random encounters. Surprise attacks can still happen with Pokemon sneak attacking you from grass that is actually tall, like waist tall grass. They can have all the Pokemon surprise pouncing on you that you want. Xenoblade Chronicles is a perfect example of how wild encounters could work in a console level Pokemon game. It's not a cakewalk that allows you to skip all challenging encounters, but it's also not as tedious and annoying with the every 2 steps inundation of encounters. In the video, I also took a few digs at 3DS. Look, I have no beef with 3DS. I purchased 3 of them, one of which at launch for full price. Yeah, the $250 price, yeah, that one. I'm just not blind to the fact that 3DS is an aging piece of hardware. Pokemon has always pushed 3DS past its limits. 3DS isn't even powerful enough to render the game in its titular 3D due to its low processing power. I get that not everyone can afford a Switch right now, but we need to be objective here. Moving the series to Switch is undoubtedly the best option. Hence the decision Game Freak made to end Pokemon 3DS games at Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. The next thing I want to touch on that was met with opposition is something I personally feel is the most baseless and subjective thing to be up in arms about. That thing was the art style. In my original video, I spoke about how I want an anime art style akin to the Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games. Some people strangely had an issue with this, despite the fact that the Pokemon games are already a janky version of this in their current state. Understand that a lot of fans want this super realistic style, which is all well and good, but an anime style would undoubtedly look a hell of a lot better on Switch, and it would fit Pokemon a lot better as well. Not every series needs a dark gritty reboot, and Pokemon definitely falls in the lines of a series that does not need that. Speaking of reboot, the last thing I want to touch on is the desire for a Gen 4 game, which I think could be cool. I don't think that should be the introduction to Switch though, if they do it, I should say, because contrary to popular belief, Game Freak never made a public oath to remake every game ever in the order that we want, but I digress. Nintendo Switch, I think, is a perfect opportunity to make the DS games visually interesting again. 3DS wasn't going to be a big enough leap in technology compared to the other generation remakes. Switch is, and then some. Other than the added technical prowess, I think it's imperative that Game Freak fixes the pacing of Gen 4 more than anything. Everything else can remain largely the same. There's a few other things that I mentioned in the original video, like a trainer progression system, trainer classes, optional vocation changes, like becoming a professor, gym leader, breeder, etc. And not a whole lot of people disagreed with, so if you haven't watched that yet, definitely check it out to hear my thoughts on those things. But those are my thoughts for this video. What do you think the first Nintendo Switch Pokemon game will be? Are you open to Breath of the Wild style sweeping changes to the franchise, or are you more excited for the eventual Gen 4 remakes? Let me know in the comments. If you like this video, subscribe, click the bell, and share it with a friend, or just someone that may have a thing or two to say about Pokemon's highly anticipated jump to Switch. Don't forget to check out the podcast in addition to all of the other new videos we make here every Tuesday, Thursday, and now Saturday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, that's it for me. See you on Saturday, and also next week.